I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you again. Nice turnout. We knew it would be. We do have some more extra seats up here. And I just got done eating, so I have a space over here at the table if someone needs to use a table seat here. I am Melinda Pilata. I'm the president this year for the Woodland Chamber of Commerce, and it's my honor and pleasure to have you all here, and also to introduce to you our speakers today, who are the candidates for U.S. Representative Congress. We have Congresswoman Jaime Herrera Beutler. If you would stand, Jaime. Wave to everybody. And we have our state representative from the 49th District, and is also the Speaker Pro Tem, Jim Moeller. Normally with a slightly smaller crowd, we pass the microphone around, we make introductions and announcements, but I think that probably would take a whole hour today. So we're going to forego that today. Unfortunately, we would love to know who all of you are. We're very interested to see all these new faces, and we're so honored to have you here. So if you get the opportunity later today to introduce yourselves to anyone, that would be outstanding. We are going to start with our weekly raffle. We do raffle, we do drawing every week. So Carol has that handle.
That was lovely.
While she's checking out the money situation here, letting you know how much you're going to win. Let me tell you about some things we have coming up. December 1st, we have our annual after hours at the Lewis River Golf Course from 5 till 7. That's always a really great time. It is our annual fundraiser as well. So if you're interested in donating a Christmas tree or any kind of basket, please let us know, and we will help you get that taken care of. And please attend that. It's a great time. Also, January 21st is our installation banquet. I'm going to switch microphones. Where we install our board members and our president, first vice president, and second vice president, secretary, and treasurer. So there are registration forms for that. It's going to be at the Heaton Lodge again, and you can find those either in the newsletter, online, or do we have them up front as well? Okay. And are you ready? All right.
There's $33 in the pot today. Jim, throw me a ticket right there, please. The number is 816517.
All right, Eric.
All right. We're giving away a Burgerville gift certificate for $20 also. I'll make it back to you here in a minute, Eric. Would you take it down for me, please? Thank you. And the number for that is 816425.
That was close though.
Darlene?
Jamie.
Hey Jim, she owes me now. I know. I drew her number. What's up with that?
You're a nice guy. This is for the ongoing pot. No, this is for the, you're doing the, okay, this is for the Gold Star Star, which gets featured on our website and also gets posted over here. And this is Best Western.
There's $49 in the ongoing pot. You have to be a member and present to win. Taxes, bookkeeping, and payroll. Taxes, bookkeeping, and payroll. That's what they do.
All right, pot grows. Very good. Congratulations, everybody. And before we get started, I want to thank David Ash and the Oak Tree Restaurant for setting this up special for us today. We knew that it was going to be a big crowd, and they went to an extra effort to make sure that they were accommodating us. Thank you, David. And now Darlene Johnson, who is our treasurer for our Chamber of Commerce board, is going to introduce the candidates and talk about how we operate here.
Hi, I'm also the legislative chair, so I'm not up here as treasurer up here, so I'm not gonna make you all pay me something, so. Anyway, I gotta say that this crowd is awesome, and we've been politically active in Woodland for a long time, and the last time and this will have to be just to the older people in the audience, the last time we had an audience this big was when Scoop Jackson came to Woodland to talk to us. And that's been a while. Well, quickly I'll run over the rules of the debate. Is each one gets 10 minutes to tell us anything they want to say about themselves or their policies or just anything. We have a timer, and I can't see her. Oh, there's the timer. She just put her hand up. A minute before your 10 minutes is up, she'll stand up, so that will give you a minute to complete. After both candidates have had an opportunity to talk, we will bring both candidates back up to the front, and then we'll field questions from the floor. We try to go from one to the other so that the one person isn't always first. And with that, each candidate, regardless of who you ask the question to, each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer. When the 2 minutes is up, our timer, Carol, will stand up, and that means you gotta cut it off really close, really soon. We want to have a candidate, we want questions from people that live in the congressional district that they're running for. And the other thing is we want questions, we do not want statements. And I'll try my darndest to keep that. And for those that have been here before, the hardest time I have is with my husband because he can hardly ever not start something with a statement, but I'll try really hard. And we want to be very courteous to both candidates, so we don't want cheering or clapping or stuff like that. Well, after the both have had an opportunity to come up, then we'll have a round of applause for both of them. Okay, and how we pick who goes first is I have given the timer a number between 1 and 10, and I'll ask Jaime first, because women first. I'm of that era. And whoever gets closest to the number between 1 and 10 can pick whether they want to go first or second. Jaime?
7.
Jim?
3.
3 is the number.
Whoa, wow.
So do you want to go first or second?
First, please.
Front and center. Jim Moeller running for office. We'll have 2 of them anyway.
Okay, all right.
The button pushes up.
Oh, the button pushes up.
There you go.
There we go. Well, first of all, thank you very much for hosting this event and inviting me to speak with you today. Above all, thank you for all the work that you do to improve our community. The public service of individuals like you is truly what makes Southwest Washington a great place to live. I am running for Congress because I know we can do better. In fact, our history as a nation is filled with moments that when Americans broke the mold and remade the world. For example, 68 years ago, 5,000 miles away, the United States loaded long-range bombers and flew them around the clock to Berlin. The aircraft was capable of carrying nuclear weapons or thousands of tons of conventional bombs. Instead, they were packed with food, fuel, medicine, clothing, and candy for the surrounding citizens of Berlin, with whom we were so recently been at war. Never in written history had a nation used its most advanced weapons to bring food and relief to the people of a former enemy city. We rescued Europe from starvation, and this was our finest hour. We maintained the peace. We protected the frontier of freedom. We did not back down, and this needs to be said, we never fired a shot in anger. To me, this is our very best, setting the world standard for the wise use of power. We were, in a word, magnificent. And this was being done at the very same time that millions of men and women were returning from World War II and being offered the GI Bill. Other vets got help buying a home or starting small businesses. Meanwhile, President Truman desegregated the Army and began a long process of making Uncle Sam an equal opportunity employer. So yes, we as a people can protect freedom. And we can be proud example to the world, and we can build better lives for our people at home too. We are best leading the world, not hiding from it. 68 years later, what will our grandchildren or great-grandchildren say of us in our time? Will they say that we left things better than we found them? I don't know. Today is considered a good day when Congress avoids the default crisis by passing what used to be a routine authorization measure. If the nation's credit is not destroyed by sunset, and if the majority party decides not to stage a coup against its own speaker and leadership, that is considered a good day. That is why Americans' confidence in Congress stands at 9%. 9%. Congress is less popular than root canals. Congress is less popular than colonoscopies. Or Congress is less popular than lice. I'm running for Congress not just because I think I can do a better job than our incumbent, which I can, but because I know that we can do a better job of running Congress itself. We can restore this institution to what it's supposed to be, the House of the People, an assembly of citizen legislators who are close to the people who elect them. Now, I've been doing that type of work in Olympia as representative for the 49th Legislative District, and now I want to take those skills and that approach to Washington, D.C. I believe that the Founding Fathers designed the House of Representatives to be close to people, which is something we haven't seen for quite some time. I will bring Congress closer to you, beginning by holding regular town halls in all of the counties in the district. My office door, in person and electronically, will be open. I believe that the distance our elected officials have placed between themselves and the public they are serving has made a lot of people feel that their government is distant and out of control. Let me say that again. I believe that the distance our elected representatives have placed between themselves and the public they are serving has made a lot of people feel that their government is distant and out of control. I will be there for you. We may not always agree, but I promise that your voice will be heard and your questions will get honest answers. My priorities in Olympia are now the things that I want to work on in DC. Education, veterans benefits, vulnerable adults, making your drive to work easier, and bringing banking and wage jobs to our communities. A strong defense, working with our allies, immigration reform, making college affordable are among my top priorities. We cannot go back to the era of denying health insurance to people with pre-existing conditions, or to charging women more than men for the same coverage. Opioid abuse and addiction to prescription drugs have now just become a federal issue. In Olympia, I helped get this legislation passed that made Washington the national leader in addressing this epidemic. It just goes to show that when a part-time legislator stands with the people he represents, he can stand up to money interests like Big Pharma. I believe that every vote the House makes is important, and that reading the legislation and voting on it as roll call votes occur is important. Attending meetings with fellow congressmen and women is important. Building regional alliances is important. Cutting across party lines and ideologies are the things you expect congressmen to do. I will be that kind of congressman. When I arrived in Olympia on my first week in 2003, I reached out to Republican members and began building friendships that led to passage of bipartisan legislation that helped improve the lives of everyone here in Washington State. Red districts and blue districts all have soldiers on patrol in the Middle East. Republicans and Democrats alike know veterans in need of a reformed VA. Republicans and Democrats alike sit in traffic on the I-5 bridge every day. On all these issues, I will listen to you and go back to DC to work with members of all parties and fight for needed reforms. Again, I want to thank you for your time today, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Jaime? Oh, there you are.
Right. Well, it's a privilege to get to be here today. And yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I asked when was the last time the Woodland Chamber was so full? And she mentioned Scoop Jackson. So she has a way of getting the big guns here. Well, it's a privilege to get to be here. And let me tell you, it is the privilege of my life to get to be your congresswoman. This is not something I take lightly, and it is something that my husband and I feel is really, it's the highest honor to get to do this job. And I do it every day with the faces, your faces, the faces of my friends and neighbors, the faces of the people I grew up with in mind. You know, when I got to Congress in 2011 actually, it was the 2010 race, I remember we felt like stepping onto the field, looking around and taking stock of what had just happened. The Democrat-controlled Congress with the Democrat administration had just rammed through a $1 trillion health care bill. They had just rammed through an $800 or $900 billion stimulus bill. Does anybody remember Cash for Clunkers or Solyndra? I mean, over and over. And I remember the popular refrain at the time was, the reason the stimulus didn't work was because we didn't spend enough. That was the environment to which I felt like my class and I stepped onto the field. It was pretty tough times. We had double-digit unemployment here in Clark County, and the economy is the #1 issue. And so I took my oath with the severity of recognizing our future is really at stake. And what have we done since then? Well, we've cut the deficit by about $1 trillion. That's not the rise in the increase. That's actual dollar-for-dollar cuts. We take our responsibility to get our fiscal house in order very seriously. I've been a champion of the balanced budget amendment because states do it. In fact, I just was talking to a researcher who's comparing states and federal government, and I said, you know, one of the ways I think that we would be more effective is if we had that balance, that this president would sign into law the balanced budget amendment, because it would hold our feet to the fire. And I've been one that supported budgets that balance, because I think it's one of the only ways to get our fiscal house in order. I also believe, you know, we got to pull back some of these regulations, as I've been an ardent opponent of the Affordable Care Act. In large part because If y'all remember, the promises were, if you like your doctor, you can keep him or her. If you like your health insurance plan, you can keep it. And it's gonna reduce costs for almost every family by $2,500. Those were the promises when that bill went through. And I think we all know those promises have failed. And we can do better. In fact, during my time in Congress, though the president has vetoed our repeal bill, we have been able to force him to sign into law or some blocks with regard to the IPAB, the Independent Payment Advisory Board, which is, as you all remember, the so-called Medicare death panels. We've been able to pull back and block some of the most egregious tax hikes that would hit seniors and working families squarely in the gut. We have more to do here, which is why healthcare has been a priority for me. I've made sure that children, poor kids who need access to specialists are going to get that access. And that's one of the most bipartisan bills in Congress right now. It's called the ACE Kids Act. It has over 200 co-sponsors, Republicans and Democrats, and it's literally breaking down the barriers, the bureaucratic barriers that states have enacted that keep kids from getting to the specialists they need to get to. And I'm really hopeful we're going to get that bill passed this fall. There's a few other provisions. I worked with one of my Democrat colleagues up north, Derek Kilmer, on trying to get protect association health plans that exist here in Washington State. I want to see them expanded across the nation. But right now, they've been under threat in our state because of our state insurance commissioner. And we've been working to stop that threat, protect those plans. And it's not just about the big issues. You know, I know everything always comes back to the big hot button issues that are always on the top of mind in DC. So much of this job really is, I think, the way I've done it, is about individuals. You know, my team and I have helped over 4,700 individuals with cases here in Southwest Washington. That's everything from someone getting, they're helping them get their lost Social Security checks so they can pay their mortgage, or to get their Properman documentation in place so they can get a job, or making sure that veterans get access to care. I should mention of that number, we've helped over 1,000 veterans who had problems with the VA. You know, here in Southwest Washington, we should have some of the best access for our veterans to care. And unfortunately, the Portland VA wait times were about 3 times longer than the national average, which to me is unacceptable. If a man or woman is willing to put their life on the line for you and I and our way of life and our children and our children's children, then we have to keep those promises to them, which is why I authored and had signed into law legislation that's going to get to the bottom of the wait time issue. It's going to require the Portland VA to fix what they've given me a few different reasons that there are problems. Or what I see is doctors leaving in droves and the wait times going up, and this legislation is going to make them address that. I'm very proud of that. Again, bipartisan legislation. I also was told by a constituent, there was a mobile medical unit sitting in Seattle, just sitting there unused. And we have a lot of rural area in Southwest Washington, and our rural veterans were having a hard time getting care. And I was told, no, it won't work, no, it won't work, no, we can't get it out, no, it's a budget, no, it's technology. And I wouldn't take no for an answer. It took me about 2.5 years of aggressive action with the VA, but I'm so pleased to report that that mobile medical unit now serves veterans in Southwest Washington. In fact, it's been so highly utilized that they've had to increase their visits, and that has actually helped, their preventative services have actually helped stave off life-threatening illnesses. And that's because in my mind, no, the answer no from a bureaucrat is unacceptable. Unacceptable, because I believe citizens are supposed to be in charge, not the government. In addition, I look at this room and I see a lot of folks I've partnered with for things here locally. I'm thinking about the Woodland High School that was opened not too long ago with some pretty stellar fans, if anybody's heard the joke about the fans in the high school. That project was under threat of being shut down, and the superintendent came to me and said, hey, we have to get this permit through the Army Corps. We're going to lose our window for construction and possibly funding. And so we went to work, and we were told it wasn't going to work, and we didn't have time, it was going to take longer, and we would take no for an answer. And that permit got through, and that construction went forward. I think about the Guild Road Industrial Project. A year ago, the Port came to me and asked for my support on an EDA grant, and I'm so pleased that I supported that. They've received now a $100,000 grant that's going to open up about 5 different buildings for jobs, for local economic development. And that's exciting. That's what this job is about, is making a difference, not just in DC, but here at home. And I'm proud of my record to do that and to partner with you all. And finally, you know, as I think about, I got to bring at the time he was the small business chairman out to American Paper, and we did a roundtable, and because as I mentioned, the economies continue to be a #1 issue for folks in this region. And the question is, how do we get more jobs, more good family wage jobs? And what I've learned is we have to protect the jobs in the sectors, the industries that we have. We need to expand and create a playing field where entrepreneurs can grow and develop new ideas. And we need to make sure we have a well-trained, highly skilled workforce. And I've been able to work on all 3 of those initiatives. When it comes to protecting jobs, I've talked with this group before about you know, regulations and what regulations do to employers. I don't need to explain that to you. The waters of the U.S. is a really good example. It sounds like a silly rule that's kind of mundane, but right now the EPA is attempting to regulate every ditch and mud puddle and water puddle in the entire United States. They're trying to say that they have jurisdiction over that as a navigable water, which means that if you want to build a deck on your property, or you want to expand your school, or you want to, you know, maybe you have an idea and you're going to grow a business, you have to go get a clean water permit for every puddle on that property from the US EPA. And those clean water permits take almost 300 days to get. They also take almost $800 to obtain. And they are very much going to stand in the way of growing and expanding jobs. And I put a hold on spending money to enforce that rule in the Energy and Water Appropriations Committee, on which I serve. And that's not going to go into effect this year. My hope is we're going to get it fully repealed. In addition, you know, I've passed legislation that's going to get small businesses to the table when it comes to competing for federal contracts. I've worked to fight for clean and renewable, low-cost energy in our region, and I've fought to make sure that our taxes are fair and balanced so that small businesses and medium-sized businesses can plan and grow without getting attacked by the IRS. So I know we're going to talk about a lot more of these things, and I also want to mention when it comes to equipping the workforce, held over 6 jobs fairs, and we do in the weeks prior we do training and HR work and resume work with those folks to make sure that they can get the jobs that are available and that they're getting on the right path for the things that are here for work in Southwest Washington. So with that, I know we're going to talk about a whole lot more, and I look forward to taking your questions. Thank you.
Front and center.
Thank you.
Now, the one thing that I've been proud of is in our chamber, we ask hard questions, so I hope you guys are ready every time. Okay. Okay.
What is your vision for transportation improvements in the region?
And pick
both.
one, you can pick one.
To both
and-
candidates.
I know, but who do you want to go first? Well, you just got through talking, so we'll let Jim first.
Okay. What is my vision for improvement of transportation projects? Well, first of all, we need to, we need to build the CRC. We need to build that bridge. It will be probably the largest public works era on the West Coast, if not the nation. Because we need to get small businesses to, once they're manufactured, once they have the manufacturing ability, is we need to get that to market. And that's what I would, that's primarily the thing that I need to say. We need to invest in our transportation infrastructure, period. Both roads and bridges.
So I do believe we need to make sure that the I-5 corridor moves and is safe. I've heard a few different proposals about bypasses, and I'm not opposed to those. The federal role changes if you take it off of I-5, but I'm willing to work on any good solution. It's not a problem for me, and I'm not wed to one idea. Save light rail. And that's because the citizens in this region have said umpteen times, and that's a real word, that they don't believe that that's going to meet their needs. So that's the part where I stick. But I've worked with lawmakers in this region to make sure that we have a consensus around what it is. And then I haven't just waited for that consensus. You know, I've helped write the first transportation bill a few years ago, and now I just supported the reauthorization of that bill to make sure there's a pot of money in there that we can apply for that will bring federal dollars back to help pay for what is I-5 infrastructure. You all pay gas tax dollars to DC. I believe that it's the Fed's responsibility to make sure that that money is invested here. And so I haven't waited just for the consensus. I've made sure that there is a way that we can get the federal match back down to Southwest Washington. And it's not always about, I know the CRC comes up a lot, it's not always about just the CRC. You know, I helped support, Richfield just got, it was I think the third or the fifth most dangerous rail overpass in the state. I helped get funding for that to change that and fix that overpass so they can have better access to that, really that economic development area, and it's a safety issue for the trains that come up and down. And I also believe that, you know, I look at some of the biggest issues here in Woodland, Scott Avenue, anyone? You know, I've been working with the state, the state federal DOT on how can we get, whether it's better spacing or federal dollars to help with the Scott Avenue interchange. So the CRC is big, but I've been working to make sure we have the regulatory impediments moved and the federal dollars there for when we decide how we want to handle our transportation issues. Because I think that's true. It's a big issue with regard to economic development. Sorry.
Next question.
Hello, I'm here.
Oh,
This is regarding
You're not
higher.
standing, might be a little easier for us to, at least for me to see you.
Hello again. This is for higher education in our district, our county, our state. But how would you, both of you, how would you develop a higher education law or program that includes all students? Not just students of low income or ethnicity, but students that include the middle income family, whose family actually might make a good living wage, but can't afford to put their child into Washington State or into University of Washington without going into huge debt. And then, my next thought is, how would you advocate for it?
Okay, you're first this time.
So I've actually worked on a couple proposals that are aimed at making sure everybody has access. Because you're right, if you're in the very lowest socioeconomic rung, generally there are programs. If we can get you connected with them, there are programs that can help. If you're on the very top end, you generally don't need that help. You know, and someone can pay your way. But it's the middle class that have been squeezed. And as someone who went to college in this state, I was in that category. It took a lot of creativity and paying off student loans at some point to get through. I mean, I think I cobbled together several different methods. So what I've done in Congress, one of the things I think would help this category of folks is tax incentives for employers who are going to help pay off loans. Right now, the average college student graduates with about $37,000 in debt, and about 15% of those young people are defaulting on those loans. And oftentimes, they go into jobs that maybe won't repay those loans. So what oh my gosh, I'm having microphone problems. It's a conspiracy. Oftentimes, they have no way to repay those. Well, I'm working on creating some sort of a tax incentive for those employers who are going to help those students pay off those loans. They'll get some help from the federal government so that those students not only are going to be looking for good jobs, but jobs that help pay off their debt. I also, against the president's wishes, he tried to veto a program for college savings at the federal. Their tax incentive advantaged accounts for people, maybe you're in the middle income and you want to save for your kids' college. He was trying to take away that right, which would make you pay more. And we said, actually in a bipartisan way, sorry, we're going to protect those accounts so that people can save and have it not count against them when they finally go apply for financial aid, when they finally go apply for these things. And I also think that, you know, a big piece of this is at the state level, but those are some of the federal pieces because the feds provide financial aid. I think we need to make sure that the money is going to the most needed students. You know, some in my caucus don't believe that the Pell Grant should be available year-round. I think I fought that idea. I believe we absolutely need to make it available year-round because some of those non-traditional students maybe aren't going in, you know, in and out during the fall and the winter and then home for the summer. Maybe they want to go to school all year round and just get through it, to plow through. I want to make sure that they have that aid available in the summer months. Okay, sorry, there's more, but I'll turn it over.
Thank you. When I first was a WSU graduate, go Cougs.
Go Huskies.
Go Hawk.
They're next to the biggest Husky fan around.
Okay. In the 1970s, that wasn't such a big deal of middle income, of giving a free 4-year degree to your student, to your son or daughter. It wasn't such a big deal. I found out what a big deal that is. It's quite a big deal. And I didn't owe anything to the college. I didn't owe anything to the banks. I didn't owe anything to my parents. So that was unusual not for that time, but for this time. I think that that's important that the U.S. Department of Education get out of the testing business and get out of the textbook business also, and that we focus in on the student, not the corporate. Anyway, everyone deserves an opportunity to pursue a higher education without going into debt. Reinvest in the federal programs like the Pell Grant. Also, the federal government should not be profiting from loan payment. Make it possible to refinance student loan debt, just like other forms of debt. A loan is a loan is a loan. If you refinance a student loan debt, it should be as refinancing a home debt. And work across the aisle to lower tuition to Washington State schools. I mean, this is something that we have done in Washington State also, is lower the tuition for state-supported schools. This can happen, and it can happen with Republican support. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a question back here.
Thank you. I've been selected by a group of friends and neighbors that cannot attend today to ask this question. It's comprised of a one-sentence introduction and then a one-sentence question. And I'll have to put my glasses on to read this.
Okay.
Most Americans are aghast at Donald Trump's words and apparent record of actions demonstrating how little he respects a woman's right to control her own body. The question then is addressed to Congresswoman Herrera Beutler. When you vote against Planned Parenthood, aren't you trying to embed this same type anti-woman philosophy into public policy?
Yeah, both of them, yeah. So you were first last time. You're first this time. Doesn't matter. Each one has a chance to answer it. So how would he vote, I guess, would be the question on Planned Parenthood.
Well, I would vote against Donald Trump president. And I would vote, well, you can't vote against anybody. You vote for someone. But I would vote for Hillary, and I would vote for Planned Parenthood. End of story.
So, is the question, do I support Planned Parenthood?
The question is more, by voting the way you do on Planned Parenthood, are you embedding an anti-female philosophy in public policy?
So, access to health care for everybody in Southwest Washington, including women like me, young women of childbearing age who have to make some of these decisions. I have worked to make sure that if Planned Parenthood is, okay, so where would someone get care? If you can't get it at Planned Parenthood for whatever reason, where can you get it? And I can provide you with a list of clinics in Southwest Washington where you can, did you know Planned Parenthood doesn't, the number one issue that women die of and don't know about is heart disease. Do you know Planned Parenthood doesn't provide screenings for heart disease? Do you know they don't do mammographies? So I've worked to make sure that the clinics that get federal dollars take care of the whole woman, not just one ideological piece. Because I believe women they don't deserve to be sold short and said, oh, the only kind of health care you need is involving this area. It's the whole woman. And in Southwest Washington, I've worked to make sure that the federal dollars that come through go to clinics that care for the entire woman. And so, I mean, I don't know how to weave Trump in and out of that other than to say that I believe in making sure that my friends and neighbors have access to health care, and I've put my money where my mouth is.
Okay, there was a question here.
This is to both of you. I know that a hot topic for me, being a small business owner, is the federal minimum wage being raised to an amount of $15 an hour. I kind of know what both your thoughts are, but just to kind of clarify them, what do you feel the purpose of raising it that high is, and who do you think it'll benefit, and how will it affect us small business owners?
Okay,
You first.
couple pieces in there. I don't support the federal government setting almost doubling the minimum wage overnight and then applying that one-size-fits-all approach to the entire country. I do believe that there needs to be a minimum wage. I'm a supporter of that. But I think that the way that we've seen it best work is not when DC says one-size-fits-all education, one-size-fits-all workforce, one-size-fits-all healthcare. It's when we let the states and the localities make those decisions. I think, you know, Seattle's going to have a different minimum wage than Castle Rock, or you know, Federal Way is going to have a different minimum wage than, you know, Carson. So the states and localities, I think, have done a pretty good job of putting before their people, taking into account the workforce needs, you know, the skills of the workforce, and really the jobs available, and setting those minimum wage. And I'm supportive of that happening in that way. The other thing, you know, when you talk about a federal hike, the CBO says, when you talk about the impact to small businesses, it could cost us upwards of a million jobs if we do that right now. And we need more jobs and more access to good, high-paying jobs, which is why I haven't just left it at minimum wage. My first minimum wage, I think, was, I want to say, $3.90, which is high. I mean, some of you are probably saying, I remember getting paid a lot less. Mine was $3.90, and I learned very quickly that I needed to finish school or I needed to get into some sort of a program because I couldn't stay in a job like that. And some people don't have those options, which is why I've supported workforce training programs for those people who need extra help getting onto a good career. But part of why, you know, I want to see people grow out of those jobs, and I want to make sure they have those opportunities, which is why I've dedicated my time and my effort to creating a level playing field where jobs can grow and businesses can expand and hire more people for better family wage jobs. Thank you.
Sure.
Well, over the last few decades, prices have gone up, but wages have remained stagnant. And for working families, basically when they have more money in their pocket, they tend to spend it. They tend to spend it. They don't always spend it, but they tend to. They tend to spend it on increased rent. They tend to spend it on increased childcare, and they tend to spend it on increased transportation. This stimulates the economy, which creates more jobs. Walmart actually figured this out because they figured that their best customer was their employees. And so they raised their rates. They raised the minimum level for what they pay them. And which ended up in more Walmart stuff being sold and being bought. Of course, it worked. So that's one of the reasons why I support the minimum wage. Also, if you're poor, if if you work in America, you should not be poor in America. And if you work a 40-hour week, you should be able to, one, afford a roof over your head and food on the table. That you should be able to do. So that would be why I support minimum wage.
Next question is over here.
Hi, this is going to be a little bit of a trick trying to do this live. My zip code is 98628. Identify the town. So my question is about Social Security. There are, let me give you the zip code one more time, 98628, okay? And there are two proposals about Social Security to make it more solvent. Tom Ryan would have us restrict the distribution of dividends or benefits by raising the benchmark of eligibility. The other camp would like to raise or remove the $120,000 no longer have to contribute cap to make Social Security solvent. Which do both of you or either of you support?
I support the elimination of the cap. That's pretty clear. And the reason why is very simple. It works. And it also allows people like Trump to pay their fair share. So, reason why.
So millions of Americans have paid in over their whole working life into Social Security and have, with the idea that the U.S. government is going to keep that promise and that those funds are going to be there for them when they retire. And I support keeping that promise. And one of the things that we need to do to make sure we keep that promise, that people talk about all these different threats to Social Security, and I'll tell you, the one major threat that I see is overspending in Washington, D.C. Politicians for years have raided the Social Security Trust Fund and left nothing but IOUs, and then expect just they can arbitrarily just, I don't know, patch it here, fill in there. I believe this year the cap is coming up, and that will address a short-term problem. But it's not going to fix the long-term problem if we don't stop the overspending. You know, my opponent and I disagree on this. I don't support taxing Social Security benefits. I don't think the government needs to get more of the money that you've already been paying on. But he feels differently. I think that if we stop that overspending, we stop that raid, and we put that lockbox back in place, we're going to protect that into the future. I don't support privatizing Social Security, I think, and I know that's popular with different folks, but I think the number one way that we secure it isn't by pretending that we can just bail it out from overspending by raising taxes here, raising taxes there. At some point, you can't, if you don't plug the hole, it doesn't matter how long you bail water. So for me, I believe that that's part of why I've fought the overspending, why we've cut the deficit by $1 trillion, and why we have more work to do in other areas, is to protect these trust funds that people have paid into their whole working life.
Can I respond to that?
Oh,
Can I respond to that?
yeah, then you could respond. Not 2 minutes.
Okay. All right.
1 minute.
All right.
Respond.
Well, I oppose the private voucher system as supported by Jaime.
I just said that I didn't. I've never voted to do it.
Well, you have voted to
Where?
the Ryan budget in
It does
2000.
not vote to privatize
It
Social
does.
Security.
It does.
Are you talking about Medicare?
Yes, I'm talking about.
Good, I'll get a chance. Go ahead.
Okay. But our nation's seniors and our younger generations will rely on it in the future. Referring to overwhelming bipartisan support for the Bush administration failed attempt to privatize Social Security, which is similar to Paul Ryan's failed plan, but Jaime is woefully out of touch with the American people on this issue. So, remove the taxable income cap. That's the very beginning of Social Security fairness.
So I've never voted to privatize Social Security. In fact, I've said since my first campaign that I believe we should do that. So I would double check your records on that. Medicare. Let's talk about Medicare for a second, because Medicare is a piece of, so it's authorized under the same act. And Medicare is, if we don't fix and save Medicare, it will also jeopardize, I was talking about overspending, it will also jeopardize Social Security. You know, this is one of the reasons I opposed the Affordable Care Act. It took over $700 million out of Medicare, which is already on shaky financial footing. I have voted, and I think it took some political courage, quite frankly, to look at Medicare and say, I want this program to be there for the people who paid into it, at or near retirement. And you know what, I'm paying into it. I sure would love it to be there for my generation, which means we need to make options available to people my age and younger to choose what type of Medicare they want. Not force them, not require them, but offer them some sort of a different model. If they want to stay with traditional Medicare, go for it, and I've supported that. If you want to do something that's more similar to Medicare Advantage, which in Southwest Washington has been utilized by almost half of the seniors here, so people like it, you can get into that. And if just by offering those two options, you put Medicare on sound financial footing for future generations. And you don't have to touch it for those people who are at or near retirement. So I actually feel like that's a plan to save Medicare and protect Social Security.
The next question is back here with JJ.
Yeah, my name is Noel Johnson. I've been in the presidential debates. I've been hearing a lot about immigration. And I want to know, is there a problem with immigration? And if there is, what can we do about it?
So, I think that's, you talked last, so it's your.
I believe there is a problem with our immigration system. I think it's broken. You can look at it from any angle. I don't think anybody disagrees that it's broken. I think there's disagreement on how to fix it. Look, I think it's not a radical idea to want to know who's coming in and out of your border. We're a nation. That's what nations do. Especially at a time when radical terrorism is trying to destroy our way of life. We need to make sure we know who's coming in and out, period. That's not radical. And I support whatever way we can do that. If it's making sure in some areas there's a better wall, if we're using more surveillance, if we're increasing border guards, I'm all for that, and I voted for those in some of the different bills. I also believe that we need to make sure those people who, I think it's like 30%, there's a number of people who come here legally on visas and overstay their visas, and there's nothing done about it. We need to make sure that ICE checks in and either makes those people re-up or leave. Hello, that's, again, not a radical idea. And then finally, I think we need to have a good conversation about what the people who are here, who were brought here through no volition of their own as, I don't know, a 3-month-old. I think once we prove to the American people that we're going to secure, when I talked about bailing water, if we don't fix the holes, it doesn't matter what we do with our policy. We have to fix the holes and secure our borders. And once we do that, then I think we as a people can have a conversation about how we want to address those people who were brought here and didn't have a choice about it. And this is their home. I'm willing to bring that conversation to the forefront, bring those people out from the shadows, because I think, people don't realize it, but they're amongst us. And we need to figure out a humane, respectful way to figure out a path forward for them. And, I have said I don't believe that citizenship should be it. I think you need to earn citizenship. But if there's some way that you can pay a restitution or, we can have that conversation. We can figure out what to do with those folks who have come here and are in that kind of no man's land.
Well, I think the border is secure, and it's probably been secure in the past decades. We should make sure it stays that way. Most undocumented immigrants are people fleeing unspeakable dangers in their own homeland. To pursue basically the American dream. And they deserve a path to citizenship. They deserve a path to citizenship. We need to take a compassionate approach to them. And immigration is basically good for America. We have become a great nation because of the immigrants that we have to our borders all the time. They have enriched our country since its foundation, and Congress has failed to pass any immigration reform. I've worked with Republicans across this great state to pass the Washington State Dream Act, or as the patient, the person from the 11th District, Zach Hudgens would say the DREAM Act. Barbara Bailey would call it the Washington State Whole Hope Act. Regardless of where your communities are, it's still the same thing. It still allows people who are undocumented to have their chance at Washington State. Yes?
I forgot to
Oh.
read that last question. Yeah, this will be the last question.
It's just now 1 o'clock, so.
Yeah, but I didn't announce last question.
Right,
So
okay.
people are gonna have to stay at least a couple minutes longer. And I think you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. First of all, Jamie, I'd like to personally thank you as a veteran and a retired senior for your worthy efforts. And I wanted to thank Jamie for her worthy efforts for veterans and retired seniors. And I wanted to ask you, you recently received an award from retailers, and could you explain to the group about that? Because that's significant for job creation.
We need more of a question that both can
Okay,
answer.
well, that's it. But he can answer too. He can
Actually, it's legislator of the year. Okay.
So he's going to speak about an award he got, so that way we're on equal playing field. This was they call it the Guardian of Small Business Award, and it's for legislators who have worked to make sure that retailers, specifically retailers, I mean it impacts other small businesses, but retailers have a shot to compete. And we know in Southwest Washington we are always up against Portland with regard to sales or online sales. There's a whole lot of issues there. And they said, you've been a champion for us. And I can't help but think a big part of that was we finally, after many years of fighting, were able to make permanent the sales tax deduction for those of us who live here. Other states get to write off their federal taxes, but we don't, because we don't pay the state income taxes. And we finally made that permanent, putting people on a more, I'd say, even footing. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Well, I got Legislator of the Year through the labor previously awarded to Senator Ned, and it was awarded this year to myself. So thank you.
Tell us a little about it.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
it is, well, it's Legislator of the Year, and that is basically, it encompasses both the labor, fully the labor table example.
You know, last question, but are you guys going to be available to stay there? Because there's people that would like to talk more.
And also, before we dismiss, Dave, how are we handling the food bills? Have they been handed out yet? Are you coming around now to deliver bills? Okay, just want to make sure.
Yeah, don't leave before you pay your bill.
Just want to make sure.
And,
Okay, so you want to handle some more questions?
I guess we can just, so we'll let him ask one more. And please, and then one in the back. And you too.
Why can't we stay?
Well, let's put it this way, the people that have to get back to work don't feel nervous about leaving.
Thank you. Paying for McCleary. There's been one group that thought that having large corporations move into the state and then give them huge tax incentives, and then we see what's happening. They've moved some of their stuff out. And then there's other people that just try to confuse us by the fact that the Supreme Court has made the decision that the legislature has to do this. So this is like it's that's not what I want to hear. I want to know how we're going to pay for McCleary. What are your plans?
I think that's a state issue. That's a state. And so the federals, this any way of doing that. Okay, I'm going to do him. And then the guy all the way with the hat, Quick.
I will be quick. Kent Coe, Richfield. And with the Health Care Act, I know you voted almost, what, 60 times against
60 plus.
health care, knowing that.
It's like 60 plus.
Both to this bill. And you have benefited greatly from your insurance and fought greatly. And I know, excuse me, emotional.
You want me to swear that?
I am, well, yeah, I'm the father of a dead child. To live 3 days, if I would have had a Gold Star insurance, like you don't want us to have, and I really coming here because you can tell we haven't had much access to you, and to get an answer to this, I think the negative, and I think a lot of people think the negative, and I'm hoping you can.
I'd be happy to speak to this, and I, as a parent who almost lost my child and who has, in this process, built relationships with all sorts of their kids, I know where that hits you. First of all, I think I should clear this up because this is something my opponent's been kind of hammering on Obamacare. That's where I get my health insurance, and that's available to you. So I know that it's been a popular line of attack for my opponent. Because my daughter survived somehow, it must be because I'm getting special because I'm a congresswoman. I'm on Obamacare because I see the problems. Oh, I have a kid who's medically complex. I mentioned the AIDS Kids Act. That's why I fought for the AIDS Kids Act, because kids who are so in 3 million of them in the nation, 3 million. 2 paid, so the state paid plans. If my daughter, if we had been on the state paid plan, the state could have said there is no way, and we're on Obamacare, there is no way that you can, or they can say you can transfer where you need to go. And I looked at that and I said that is absolutely not right. So I have gotten over 200 of my colleagues, men and women, Republicans and Democrats, to help me break that barrier down so that any kid, regardless of income, regardless of zip code, can get access from the top-notch health centers across the United States. And you know what? You know who are fighting me on that? Medicaid state directors, those who say that they like to help the poor, those who say that they're all about health care for the poor. Because I'm taking away authority from them and I'm putting it in the hands of families who desperately need to get life-saving care for their kids. And it's because of my experience with my daughter that I know firsthand Obamacare does not meet our needs. It's not just the middle income that are getting slapped sideways with Obamacare, it's those people who desperately need health care within the system. They can't get the access they need. We're losing specialists, they're retiring, they're not going into specialties, especially pediatrics. They don't get paid more. A pediatric specialist does not get paid more. They get paid less to go into a specialty. And I want to preserve that access for 21st century care for young people, because I don't want anybody to have the experience where a kid could have lived and they had to bury him. I've been by those parents, and I will not stand for that. So thank you for the chance to clarify.
I had one at the very
Jim.
Oh, you want to? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I thought it was.
Well, it's not perfect, but it's a good first step in Obamacare. We have a long way to go on Obamacare. In fact, it's, what, 60 sometimes that you repealed it?
Over 60.
And it ended up on the president's desk this time. He vetoed it. It was not sustained. It's going to take a lot of hard work to get Obamacare working. We must actually make ourselves towards a single payer system, towards universal care. That will cover basically every American from cradle to grave. The GOP has repealed these benefits without proposing an alternative at all. And the GOP healthcare is basically you're on your own. So,
I have
You know,
I do have to speak to that because, and this is a defining issue, defining. I want to make sure Americans don't just have a cheap card in their pocket that says they get care when they can't access it. Has anybody here been a new Medicare retiree and not been able to find a doctor? Or anybody who's been in the VA system and had to wait? The VA system, though it has its pluses, is about 1% of the population, and it is a closed system. Meaning that if they deny your care, they can hold you hostage. You can't just go somewhere else. We've been trying to actually break that up so that the VA, if you want to get care in your VA, you can. If they won't meet your needs, you should be able to access it in your local community. I mean, I mentioned the ACE Kids Act, but I also believe that, you know, I mentioned association health plans for small businesses, purchase of health insurance across state lines. These are things that I have been passionate about and have been pushing my Republican colleagues to put into action. And we finally have. It's called betterway.gop. It's our plan for healthcare. So for those who say we need to have something to replace it with, I'm the chiefest among you. Some of those things that I've been fighting for are in that plan, and there are other ideas and alternatives. Please look that up because I think it's key to this debate as we move forward. So thank you.
You know, I don't know if Jamie knows it, but you have a phone call in about 4 minutes that you've got to be on. So.
I have one quick question.
Yes.
Earlier you mentioned that you're supportive of renewable, sustainable energy. I want to know your position on why you aren't speaking out against this, both of you, why you aren't speaking out against the Chinese-funded methanol plant that's going to pour at least 1.4 million tons of carbon greenhouse gas into our local environment. And the other one is, how can you support coal, which is totally enemy of the climate, as proven by hard science, beyond a reasonable doubt, no kind of equivocation. How can you support coal coming through Longview on trains that come through Powder River when that is totally a non-sustainable, totally a greenhouse gas effect?
Hey, I think that's getting to be a statement. The question was that a while ago, and they don't have time. So, do you want to, Jim, you want to take a quick answer?
Well,
and you take a quick answer, then you get to your phone
okay.
call.
First of all, we need to focus in on renewables, not 19th century like coal or oil or methanol. We need to focus in on renewables that include wind, that include solar, that include hydro, that include geothermal. All these things are renewable. And quite honestly, can we imagine that Vancouver will get the kind of investment it needs with being tied to an oil terminal? No. Or a methanol terminal, or a coal terminal? No.
I think the beginning of the question was about supporting the methanol plant, the proposed methanol plant. And I'm going to read you a quote from Governor Inslee. He considered it one of the most innovative clean energy projects in the nation, and it is under review. I don't have a say on whether that gets supported or not supported. It's got to go through the NEPA and the SEPA process, which are pretty darn stringent, and I support them. I think if you want to come here with any project that people have, there's good conversation about, there's controversy over, you need to be a good neighbor and you need to prove you can jump through the necessary environmental hurdles. If you jump through the necessary environmental hurdles and it has been judged fairly that you can be a good neighbor, I don't see why we would turn our backs on good paying jobs. But having said that, that's not something I get to approve or disapprove of. It either passes muster environmentally or it doesn't. You're claiming it doesn't. You're going to get your day in court, and you're going to get your opportunity to put that into public record, and that's going to be considered by both Governor Inslee's by the state environmental folks and by the federal folks, and we'll see. I don't know. It may get permitted, it may not, but that's not exactly something I get to make the decision on.
I think we need to.
Thank you, Jamie and Jim, both for attending.